Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Through Board Game Blog number 26. It's for May 9th, 2014. So in a couple of weeks, or maybe even next week, the Spiel committee over in Germany is going to nominate some games for the Spiel des Jahres, the Kenner Spiel des Jahres, and the Kinder. And so last year I did a video that was kind of like an American Spiel des Jahres award. You know, what if we had that kind of award over here in America? You know, and I set up some really arbitrary parameters of, okay, let's only look at games that were published by American companies, you know, that were originally published here and then not imported. So anyway, this is a kind of interesting exercise. I kind of thought about doing something like that again, but just the kind of list of games I kept coming up with, I don't know, for whatever reason, really weren't that satisfying to me, so I couldn't really figure out a good way to do it. And sometimes it was kind of like, well, I just re-gave you my top games from 2013 again. So, I mean, that's no fun. So I kind of try to adjust the parameters a little bit, and just to kind of reiterate my sort of, I guess, philosophy or current way of thinking that can change any second. You know, I do think that this country needs an award like that. You know, just sort of like, hey, you know, American people, here is a game that you can kind of hang your hat on. You can go pick it up and you know it's going to be a quality game, you know, hopefully. And, you know, it's going to be like a family game, which is kind of like your Spiel, or your more slightly gamery type of game on your Kenner, and then even like a Kinder, which I have no knowledge about. I'm not going to do anything Kinder-wise because my youngest is 13, so I don't really have any knowledge of that kind of game. You know, and it's kind of an evangelical kind of award where it's like, here's, you know, 1 or 2 games that, you know, you can take and grab, plus the nominees, of course. And, you know, and I did have a discussion with somebody about a week ago. They were like, you know, what's this whole big deal about, you know, evangelizing board games to the world? You know, why don't you just shut up and have your hobby? And I'm like, well, okay, good point. But, you know, whatever. You know, I said, screw it. You know, why not? Why not be able to say, hey, here's something cool to look at? The Oscars do that for movies, and the Emmys kind of do that for, you know, for TV. Like, hey, take a look at this industry or this hobby and look at the cool thing that they came out with last year that, you know, should be appealing to you, at least on some level. So, so whatever, you know, that's kind of what that's about. And I don't think we have an award outside of the Spiel that really focuses on that aspect of it. I do think, honestly, the Dice Tower Award, you know, to look at an American award, and the reason I'm so American focused is because I live here, and these are all the people I see every day. So that's kind of where that focus comes from. But I do think the Dice Tower Award is probably the best award outside of the Spiel Award. I don't always agree with the Spiel nominees and the winners and stuff, that's fine. But I do think outside of that award, the Dice Tower is definitely, I don't know, the most important award or the most relevant award in the industry. And just a disclaimer, I vote on that and nominate games for that as well, and that's not the reason. I think that Tom does a good job with that, and most of the nominations I agree with. But anyway, so that's not about that. So what I'm going to go into today, after that preamble, is I'm going to list 3 games that should win, but probably in a million years won't win the Spiel des Jahres, and 3 games also with the Kenner, kind of the more gamery games. Games that I think fit their criteria and usually fit their kind of normal, you know, stuff that will, you know, would qualify them for that award, but either probably haven't been published in Germany or whatever. And then I'm just going to speculate, and I'm going to name 2 games that I think have a good shot of actually winning over there in Germany. Just, you know, speculating is kind of fun. So, no more preamble, let's jump into the spiel of the games that could win, but I guarantee you will never win. Almost 100% guarantee. So the first one to look at here is 8-Minute Empire Legends. It's a little bit fantasy themed, so I think that probably disqualifies it, but, you know, they had nominated Legends of Andor before, and it's a nice, quick game. It's kind of borderline filler, which is kind of what the, you know, the Spiel games tend to be, but I really like the dynamics of this game. It's got some nice, solid area control elements, different special abilities on the cards, and all kinds of stuff, and it does play out relatively differently each time you play it, and it's a lot of fun. The art's very evocative, very whimsical. You know, it's not super serious or super, you know, risque fantasy type of thing. So I think that's a good, solid nomination, and it would be if it had been released in Germany, and it may have been. I'm not 100% sure, but it's one that I suspect would not get the nomination. The next one is Dragon's Hoard, and this was actually a Kickstarter game last year. So was 8-Minute Empire Legend. And we'll make a quick note here. Kickstarter games, I think, probably go a little bit in the direction of being disqualified for such an award, you know, sort of this evangelical, you know, let's hang our hat on this game award, because they're not always readily available in distribution and in local shops and things like that, even online shops. So I would say, unless a game has been in distribution, it would be stricken from nomination for this kind of award. So, but I'm kind of playing a little make-believe here, so I'm going to kind of break that rule. I think Dragon's Hoard, even though it's just a small card game, I mean, last year Hanabi won, and it's just a small card game, this is a lot of cool stuff. Now, it's fantasy, you know, it's very super fantasy, so that's going to disqualify it probably, but again, you know, I wait to be, you know, contradicted there. It's got nice set collection, you know, very simple, you know, rule set. It has take that elements, and that can be kind of nasty, but not that nasty, and I think that is a very interesting thing that they've done to make it so that the take that really works, and it works in a family setting, and it works in a kind of a friendly setting. It's not, you don't feel like you're being beat up upon or you're being too much of a jerk when you do it. And I think, honestly, that's probably an overlooked part of this game. I haven't seen very many people review it, but I would definitely go take another look at that. And it's a very nice, quick, you know, lunchtime filler game. We played it for about a couple weeks at lunch, you know, every day, and had a blast with it. And the art is amazing, and the, you know, production quality. The cards are a little bit kind of, you know, funky cardstock, but it's not that bad. You know, I played it a bunch and a bunch and a bunch, and let's say 20 times, you know, right up at that level. So I can see the cards kind of going through some wear and tear after another 20 plays, but to me it's serviceable enough, and the game holds up. So anyway, take a look at Dragon's Hoard. It's a very interesting game. Sorry about that. My son called. My older son, he's away at work. So anyway, that was Dragon's Hoard. I didn't want to go back and try to redo my train of thought there. So the last game I'm going to say that probably should be, but never will be nominated, would be Star Realms. This is a game that has gone really overlooked, I think. It came out at the very end of last year. I think I got it maybe like 2 or 3 days before the new year or something like that. I got it like right after Christmas, and so it's excellent. And I've had a chance to play it several more times since I initially reviewed it, and really is a fun, quick, you know, smash you in the face type of game. Obviously, there's too much kind of interaction and sort of attacking with players, but I don't think it's mean, and I do wish that we could have an award like the Spiel over here where we can kind of have games that, hey, oh my gosh, there's player conflict, you know, whoa, you know, take a step back here. So we don't have to really hang our hat on, oh, it's a family game, we can't have player contact, you know, or conflict. So I think you can have player conflict in a family game, so it's okay, as long as it does it right, and it's just not like, you know, completely like overbearing and just brutal and evil, you know. That's not really what you want to do. But I think Star Realms is an excellent game. It's got cool art. It's got a lot of cool different modes, co-op, like a raid mode, which is kind of like an all versus one. You know, you have like a dungeon master guy that has a lot of extra health and extra cards that he can draw on things. And those are awesome modes. But even the two-player game can be pretty fun. So I would say Star Realms will be one. So those are 3 games, 8-Minute Empire Legends, Dragon's Hoard, and Star Realms, that I'd say, yeah, I could see them being nominated for a Spiel. I don't care what the actual Spiel would do. To me, if you take the criteria of, hey, we want a nice family game, it's quick to play, it's very easy rules, you know, you can whip it out and play it really quickly, and it's fun, and you know, it's tightly designed and all that stuff. Those 3 games all fit that criteria, and they're really good, and the production quality is pretty good as well. So now let's go into the should win of the Kenner. So the first one is Relic Runners, a game that probably I even overlooked, and I think a lot of other people overlooked, and I played it a few more times since last year, and it's the one I kind of thought of putting in sort of my favorites of 2013, but I kind of, you know, there's just a lot of good games. This one's really cool. It has that sort of, everybody likes to use this word emergence, which I have some issues with, but this kind of has that emergent stuff, where you will see the board and see the networks and see the special abilities that are showing, and then, you know, you try to build your little routes and you see where other people are building routes, and the game state is always kind of shifting, and there's not a lot of complexity kind of in the mechanics and the levers that you're going to pull, but you know, what the other players do and stuff like that is really going to affect, and you can kind of bounce off and sort of piggyback on top of what they've done and different stuff like that. This is a game I think that is maybe not quite complex enough for the Kenner. And this is something where if I try to pull down the criteria and sort of, you know, match it up to my games, the Kenner's the tricky one, because the Spiel, it's going to be quick, it's going to be less than an hour, you know, it's going to be a small rule set, a couple of pages at most. The Kenner kind of goes all over the place from what I've seen. So that's the tricky one. It's like, well, that's not complex enough, or, you know, this one is like a family game, and, you know, but this other one was, you know, that's a medium weight Euro, that's a good one. So that one's tricky. This one I think is probably right on the ballpark though for you know, their style. And I don't know if it was released in Germany, but I could see, you know, this one actually getting nominated. The next one will never ever get nominated ever, and that's 1775 from you know, Academy Games. Now obviously it's American history, and I think something that was so steeped in history is going to not, you know, get the nomination, especially in another country. But I think even like, you know, something German war game, for example, well, I don't know if those exist, but you know, if it was a historical game based in Germany, I don't think it would get nominated over there, because that's not really what they're doing. But I do think that 1775 is a game that I would have included last year in my top games of the year had I played it. I didn't really care for 1812. This is way better than 1812 because the balance is better, just the map is better. This is just a much better game. And this one it's great because you can play 2, 3, and 4 player. It's got the team element that works really well. It's a war game, but on the other hand, you know, I see this being a game as a sort of a gateway type of game. Now, I don't think it's a Spiel game because it's going to go, you know, an hour and a half or so. And it is combative, and it is, you know, you're going to lose territory and gain territory and stuff like that. So it's a little bit more gamery, but it's not devoid of strategy at all. There's very interesting, you know, choices to make with the different cards that you're going to play and what order to play them in. I think it's an excellent game, and definitely should be, you know, considered for this kind of thing. And I think, to me, I'm almost kind of pushing this one a little bit because it is a war game. It does have combat elements and conflict, but it's still very solid design with good elements, and it's a tight design. And so I think this is something that, yeah, I don't think this would ever win an award, but I could see this kind of game being nominated as like, hey, here's a tip of the hat to, you know, some conflict games, some games based in history and stuff like that. So that would be an interesting, you know, paradigm to destroy and go away forever, this whole, you know, antagonism towards history and conflict and stuff like that, for a game that could be a gateway game. Because I think I played games with enough different types of people that they'll be like, well, Ticket to Ride is boring as all get. And these are not gamers that say this. Other people love it, that's fine. But, you know, a gateway game doesn't necessarily mean always for sale, no thanks, Ticket to Ride and Settlers of Catan. It can mean anything. I mean, it could be Eclipse, but, you know, that's kind of rare, I would expect. So I think this style of game can fit in, and like I said, tight design, good components, you know, good strategy, all that stuff. It hits all those criteria if you just, you know, ignore for a second the history and the combat. So next one, last one here actually, Space Cadets Dice Duel. And this one actually is a little bit on the lighter side, but because I am an idiot and always screw up how I explain firing torpedoes, I don't know what it is, or either I'll explain it right and then the people just won't get it, and then I'll be like, no, this is how it works, and then I don't know what it is. Every time I explain this, I screw it up somehow. So anyway, once we get it, it's very quick. You can play a game in 20 minutes. You can play 2 games in a row, no problem. And it's got the nice real-time element, which is kind of in vogue right now. And it's got team elements, which is kind of in vogue. I think this is, you know, one of the progenitors, I guess, of that idea. So you got the team element as well. Great components. Very just hectic, awesome fun. And so I could see, again, a game like this where it's got conflict, but it's, you know, it's not so, you know, dramatic of a type of conflict. It's very fun. You've got your teammates. So it's got the teamwork as well, kind of working in sort of contrast to the conflict. Again, it's team versus team, but you have those sort of elements at play here. And I think definitely Space Cadets Dice Duel would be one that you could hang your hat on and say, hey folks, you know, are you in for a little bit slightly more complex kind of thing? Then here you go. I mean, I have a hard time saying that. It's just because the game rules are not complex on the surface or on paper, but once you kind of throw everything into play and you're kind of working through your game, there are going to be elements where I'd be kind of hesitant to say, you know, hey, a group of completely novice gamers, you know, take this on. You need a couple of handhold people, you know, at the table to kind of guide you in. And so to me that kind of bumps it up to the Kenner, but I'm not going to really argue that too much. Anyway, so those are the three that should be, probably never ever would be nominated for like a Kenner. The Relic Runners, that one maybe would be, and then 1775 and Space Cadets Dice Duel. So anyway, those are the three games that I think should be, but never will be. So now I'm just going to do some speculation. I will do speculation on the Spiel. And these games are all games that have come over to the US. Now there's a lot of games, like I'm seeing buzz about, I think, was it Abluxen, which is a small card game. That looks really cool, and I, just from reading the rules and watching a video on that, I can say, yeah, that looks like a good Spiel. And then the other one is Istanbul, another one. But those haven't come over here yet, so I can't really make a judgment. And so to kind of keep it sort of, regionally focused on myself, I'm just going to talk about games that have come over, and I'm almost sure, I'm 99% sure these have been released in Germany as well. So anyway, Spiel, Splendor, and I think everybody and their brother is, and their mother and their sister, I have said, Splendor would be a great Spiel, and I wouldn't be surprised if this got nominated and won. We have been playing it at work every day for like almost a month now. We took a little break to play some awful game for this week, and then we're going back to Splendor tomorrow, probably for the next week. So Splendor is amazing, really. I mean, it's just, I know it looks like a number cruncher, and it kind of is, but it really just kind of keeps unraveling and unraveling and unraveling, and very quick and fun to play. So definitely this is a perfect one. It's a little number crunchy and dry, so should lose points for that, but to me the components and everything kind of push it over that, and just it's a game that you're going to get better at. At first you're going to kind of learn how the mechanics work and all that stuff, but you're going to be able to improve over time, and I think that's an important thing with these games. So that's Splendor, and the next one, which a lot of people have also said, should be no surprise, I think, is Steam Park. That's a game that I think has got a lot of real-time value to it, and like I said, that's kind of in vogue, and you can play this in multiple stages, so you can kind of play a simpler game where you take the little station tents and just count those as points versus special abilities. So I like that aspect of it. You can kind of swing it from a family side to, oh, okay, I'm going to get this and combo it with this ability and all that stuff. So again, there's room to grow with this game, and I think that's it should be indicative of a good Spiel nominee. Would be a game simple, short rule set, but hey, you can play it and get better and better and better, and it'll last you through the year, at least if you were to play it several times in a year. I would not be surprised if either of those got nominated. And then finally, the last two here for the Kenner. First one is Russian Railroads, and I think that has the right rule set. And now getting back to kind of the complexity issue, like a Caverna, I would probably I would play Caverna over these two. I'll mention the other one in a second. Caverna and Hegemonic for sure, but I think those are just kind of too much happening for a good Kenner. There's a complex rule set with those a little bit. I mean, Caverna's, well, I mean, if you played Agricola, it's not that complex, but so Hegemonic for sure, there's a lot more meaty and heavy. So some games are just too heavy, and I think, for my taste, those would be too heavy for this kind of award. Now, Russian Railroads, on the other hand, is very sort of simplistic in a way, but again, you have that sort of evolving, learning and improvement and strategy and all that kind of stuff. And it plays super quickly, but it is, there is a fair bit going on. Definitely not anywhere near a Spiel nomination level. Components are great, great production quality, so something that I would not be surprised if we see Russian Railroads get nominated. Now the last one here, I struggle with this one. Russian Railroads to me was kind of a no-brainer. That really feels like a Kenner game. Now the last one here is Concordia. Now I actually like another game better called Lewis and Clark, but to me Lewis and Clark feels a little bit too complex in a way, because so many different special abilities that you can kind of figure out, and from what I've seen, folks have a hard time on their first couple plays kind of playing the game in a reasonable time frame. So I would say that definitely goes away once you play it a few more times. But so to me, that I go back and forth between Concordia and Lewis and Clark. I like Lewis and Clark better. It's got much better artwork, much better components. It's much more interesting kind of game in the terms of that it's a race to the Pacific Ocean, but wrapped in Race for the Galaxy, and with some other stuff too. So, but Concordia is very neat because it's like people say, it's a rondel with cards, and this one has too, that sort of evolution of like, oh wow, you know, I can really see this game playing out very differently every time. You've got the 2 maps on either side of the board, so you can have an open-ended 3-player game, a tight 3-player game, the same with 4, and the variable setup and things like that. So you're going to keep coming back to the well here, and I think that's a very important part of, you know, games that would be nominated for such an award, is that there is a lot of replayability. Now, Lewis and Clark, I think there's a lot of replayability, but this one is going to be so dramatically, you know, different. I feel like I'm overselling that, but it's going to be very different every time you play, and the setup and the optimal routes that are going to appear, and, you know, based on what all the other players do. So Concordia, I could kind of go give or take Lewis and Clark. Wouldn't be surprised if they nominated Lewis and Clark. But to me, there's just a lot of iconography, a lot of special card abilities and things that, you know, seem to kind of push it out of what they normally do. But again, this is the speculation part. I would expect Concordia over Lewis and Clark to, you know, to get the nomination there. Anyway, so that's just kind of a general overview. I think there's other games, you know, that have been available here that, you know, could win such an award if magically this anybody somewhere would, you know, put together something like that. But that's pretty much all I got to say. So that's just, you know, some awards, possibilities, and some speculation, and just some kind of fun banter. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I appreciate any feedback. You know, some nominations that you maybe think of, and if you are one of our friends over on the eastern part of the Atlantic, you know, name some games that you think will win, because I've been hearing a lot of buzz about a Buxel, or names escaping me, whatever it's called, a Buxin, and Istanbul, and I expect those to come over. So if there are any other games that we have no idea what they are over here, you know, please let us know so we can start researching them and go find them. Okay, thanks.